Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us today on this webinar on Microsoft 365 backups. My name is Matthias, and I'm one of the directors of Level Up Networks. So this is today's agenda. So essentially we have a few points to go through. It shouldn't be a very long webinar. I estimate about 30 minutes or so. But as always, if you have any questions, please also always refer to the top right-hand side of part of your screen where you will have a little chat box with a question mark there, and I will be monitoring the questions throughout the whole presentation. So if you have any questions, just go into that little screen, type your question, and then when we get to the Q&A session, I shall go over all the questions that you have asked. Okay, without any further ado, let's start with the first topic, which is the introduction to the SaaS platforms. So what is a SaaS application? So essentially, SaaS applications were adopted quite a few years ago, but it obviously increased quite a bit with all the remote work during this COVID-19 pandemic. These tools have essentially become part of everyone's lives, and it has essentially given the opportunity to many businesses to be able to work remotely without any sort of complicated setups. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of organizations out there that believe that SaaS applications are self-reliant and that you don't need any backups with them, but unfortunately that's not exactly the case. So that's hence the purpose of this presentation, is to show you what's the best practice in order to do these sort of backups. So SaaS means software as a service, and it's basically where you download some sort of software into your computer. Sorry, that you don't download any software into your computer. So essentially what you do is that you work online through your web browser, or if you're going to download an application, these most likely will be on a subscription basis, such as Office 365, where you pay either one lump annually or on a monthly basis, you pay per license that you use in order to use, for example, Outlook and Word, Excel, etc. So obviously there's quite a few advantages with having these type of softwares which are available on the cloud, and one of them is obviously that, like I said earlier, you don't necessarily have to download the software into your machine. You can gladly work through a web browser. Another thing is also that it doesn't rely strictly on the requirements of your machine. So because most of the processing power is done on the cloud itself, that means that your machine does not need to be a powerhouse in order to run these applications. Another advantage, of course, would be that these are usually fit for purpose. So it doesn't matter how large your organization is. There's usually a solution for you. It doesn't matter if you're a one-man band or if you're a corporate. And the best thing as well is that these applications are continuously being upgraded and updated through their life cycle on the web itself. So I've already hit a few of the advantages, but essentially these are the main advantages of software as a service. The big one is accessibility. So as long as you have internet, you can access them from anywhere in the world. The updates and patches, like I mentioned, all the updates are done in the back end on the provider's servers instead of on your physical machine. The hardware, you don't need any very fancy hardware to run these applications. Once again, everything is done in the back end. Obviously, if you're going to use cloud service such as, for example, Photoshop or something like a video editing software, then yes, you would still need quite a big computer or a powerful computer, as the video editing will be still being done on your graphics card and also your CPU. So that still matters, but most of the times that's the exception. Then the market reach. Well, that's essentially that, if you're going to build a SaaS application, you can literally target it for the whole world, and it'll be much easier. You can just have maybe one platform and then just make it available in different languages or with different tools instead of having to, code extensively to apply this onto more of a one-on-one basis, depending where you're going to put it. The savings in storage, so it's essentially most of your storage is done on the cloud, so you don't rely anymore on any very large storage hard drives, for example, servers, NAS drives, things of the sort. So you would probably just pay a little bit more to increase your storage on the web, and you don't have to worry about that. And of course, all these sort of applications come with some analysis and reports, and it's very easy to get data and analytics from all of these type of softwares. Now, saying that, SaaS applications do not require backups. That's probably one of the most common myths and misconceptions. So in this section, we're going to go through a few of them, what people believe, and this probably is the biggest one. Now, for example, for those of you that may already use Office 365, you're probably aware that there is something called as retention. So essentially what Microsoft does is that it will, when you delete a file, or when you create a file, or when you edit a file, it will save things in what is called a version. And a version, exactly what it does is that it keeps that copy of a file for X amount of days. In terms of Microsoft 365, it keeps it for 180 days, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a backup. So for example, if you delete that file, it may get corrupt on your retention policy, or if you were attacked by some sort of ransomware or malware, that will also infect your version on the cloud, and obviously you won't be able to restore it if you need it. Now, one of the main errors still happening with data loss is usually user error, where the user might accidentally delete it, or they forgot to save it, or we've had quite a few of these. You have spillages of your hardware, or of course you lose your laptop, your mobile phone, and then there's no way for you to recover that information again. Another common myth is that people think that file sync is a replacement for backups. Now, some applications that use file sync would be something like Microsoft OneDrive or the Google Drive. So essentially what that does is when you install OneDrive, you do a synchronization of what's on your SharePoint drive or OneDrive into your computer, and then as you edit a file or as you open a file, that will simultaneously update it to the cloud version. Now, for those that have used OneDrive in the past, or even Google Drive, you may notice that sometimes you create a file and that is not necessarily synchronized on the web immediately or at all. One little error on your OneDrive application in your computer could stop the entire sync, so you could be working for days without noticing that nothing has been actually uploaded to the cloud. So that's why you can't really rely on file sync for backups. Then you can't really rely also on versions. So for example, let's say you have one document, you create a document called, I don't know, pizzas, and you start writing about pizzas, you leave it for a few days, you go back, you edit that file. So the first time you created the file, that would be version 1. And then when you edit that file, that would be version 1.1 and so forth. But obviously, it doesn't store all the versions. It is limited. So if you've been making mistakes for quite a long time, you may overwrite one of the previous versions. Hence, you will not be able to replace that file or you'll have to rewrite everything that you've done already. Now, this is something that is obviously not always a big problem. We know that a lot of the major corporations, the reliability is very high. Nonetheless, they are not perfect. They are still running machines, and machines do disconnect, machines do break. So for example, we had last year alone in October, Microsoft had 3 significant outages that impacted all the businesses in the world. And then also we had quite a few Google outages. And if you recall, maybe not too long ago, we have a massive outage when it came to social media with Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, everything going down. So it does happen. So obviously you could be working on a very important project and you're confident that your data is being saved, and then you realize you close the application and everything you've done just doesn't work, or it's not available, it didn't synchronize. So that's why you can't think that these applications will always be available. So that's why you will require some sort of business continuity in case they're not available. So in case, for example, that you cannot save to the cloud, maybe you can save it on your backup directly, or you can save it on your application and then upload it. There's many ways for you to go around it, but obviously being aware that it's down would be the first issue altogether. Another myth and misconception is that Microsoft and Google are responsible for your backups. Well, not really. The way these corporations work is that they work under the shared responsibility model. Obviously, they will give you some sort of tools to retain your information, but they're not responsible if it's lost. So you need to take action in order for your backups to be backups and not just some sort of retention. So for example, it's your responsibility as a company to ensure that you have other solutions in place, and you shouldn't always rely that Microsoft and or Google or any other company, will keep your information backed up for you. So as I mentioned earlier, I did a quick touch on what a retention policy is. So essentially is where the company, in this case, Microsoft we're talking about, will keep your data for a certain amount of days or months. You can always configure that in the back end as an administrator, but with a backup solution, they are a bit more flexible in how you can, for example, store this data. So for example, if you have requirements to keep data for 10 years, as a lot of finance and accountancy firms need, you can set that up. You can set it up to delete data after a few weeks or delete it after a few months. It's very, very customizable in that sense. So it's very important that you can protect all your important data, all SharePoint, OneDrive, Exchange Online, Exchange on-premise, and of course now the everlasting and very famous Microsoft Teams. Sometimes you may need to keep that for your compliances. So it's very important that you have very much in clear what your retention policies would be for all of your data. So obviously there are many reasons of why retention policies are not suitable as a backup solution. So for example, if a person deletes a SharePoint file or one in OneDrive, and then you need it later, then this would cause your administrator quite a bit of a headache, because if it's not in your retention library, then you have to really drill down into the actual retention policies and the recoverable items in order to find them. Now, many MSPs might charge you for this because it's not really part of the solution they will offer. They will offer you, for example, to restore it from the retention itself, but not if they really have to dig down, with sometimes it could take up to hours just to find a file, as the way that Microsoft will index the file is not specifically in the file name. So they might have to go through tons of data until they find your file. And it might be as well that they can just tell you, look, we can't do it, or it's not there, or it's going to cost you too much money for this file, so it's not worth even trying. So a variety of SaaS backup solutions are already in place. This is not something that is new by all means. Obviously, they've existed for quite a while, but these are the type of things that you need to look in order to sort of find what works best for you. So one of them would be the comprehensive protection, the ease of use and the management of the actual platform. Also, you need to take in place business growth. Are they charging you by the megabyte? Are they charging you by the gigabyte? Is it unlimited growth that they offer you? So you have to be very careful what solution you choose, because if you grow exponentially. They might get too expensive if you're talking about terabytes of data. Something very important is the security compliance and obviously the return point of restoration, the RPOs and the RTOs. I'm going to go a little bit more into in-depth of what each of these mean. So if you just bear with me for the next slide now. So for example, comprehensive protection. So some of them just will email you, will protect you from your emails, your files, your folders, but they might not protect you from your actual applications. So you have to more or less see what is it that you want to back up. Maybe if it's just emails you want to back up, I mean, you might get something that specifically backs up emails. If you want the whole suite of emails, mailboxes, Microsoft Teams, OneDrive, then you're going to go and find something like that. So it's very important that you know first what is it that you want to protect. So you also then have the recovery point objective and the recovery time objective. Now these metrics are very important. So depending on how important the data is that you want to restore, might also mean how much it is available. So maybe some platforms will take hours to restore your data because you have to literally restore your entire drive. Others will go specifically to that particular file you want or that particular email, which will save you lots of time in order to back up your solutions. But obviously the price disparity may be something that also is very important for you. So you need to see what's more important for you in terms of time, or if you want something that will just do everything for you. Now, ease of use management is maybe not something that you are going to have to worry too much, especially if you have an IT team or if you outsource your IT. But essentially, this is how easy it is to use the actual backup solution. If you need to take just a course just to learn how to use the solution, then maybe it's not going to be worth it. So you might want something that's a bit easier, more user-friendly. You also have to make sure that you get what you're paying for. Many companies will advertise that they actually back up some things, but they might back it up, but just not in a way that it's easy for you to restore. So there's no point if you get a full backup if then you have to go through everything just to get one file. So it's very easy. It's very easy and very helpful that you know this beforehand as well. Now that we live a lot, especially in the UK, with the whole GDPR world, you have to ensure that your backup solutions also meet your compliance. So for example, how long can you keep a mailbox backup for? How long can you keep files for? How long can you keep personal information for? So this is where you have to make sure that the solution you choose as well has some sort of compliance. So for example, let's say I delete a mailbox. Is that going to delete the backup as well? Is that what you want? Or maybe you want to keep that backup but not keep the actual mailbox. These are the considerations, as I said, that you need to keep in place. And this is very important. We all want to grow. We all want to have, a Fortune 500 company. So this is where you have to sort of plan a solution that's going to take into consideration your growth, or, in the worst of the cases, what if you have to shrink? How is that going to affect you? So, a lot of companies that do backups will charge you a flat fee for unlimited backups. Others will charge you for snapshots. Others will charge you per storage you occupy, so on a gigabyte level. So maybe if you started off with maybe, 100 gigabytes, it'll cost you X, but then you just hired, 50 new employees because the project you've been waiting for came out. So now you have to, 50 times the amount of data. So that's not going to be, a very good solution for you, because eventually it's going to get more expensive than it's really, well, not that it's really worth, but it's just going to get astronomical very quick. And you have to use an application that will work not only for its ease, its compliance, but also that works and takes into consideration about your business growth. So in our case, we use a company called Datto. Now, Datto is a leading backup solution provider. They do many types of backups. One of their solutions is SaaS Protection, but they do, they do server recoveries. They do virtual environments. They have quite a lot of products, and this is just one of them. So for example, this SaaS Protection is just a cloud-to-cloud backup solution, which offers you an easy way to backup and restore both Microsoft 365 and also your Google Cloud. They're all stored in an encrypted server, which is owned by Datto. You will have up to 3 times daily snapshots of your data. So that means that within one day, you can probably go in the morning, afternoon, and late afternoon backup. So you have the option to backup at different times. So let's say, for example, you created a file this morning and you were working it late in the afternoon and you accidentally deleted it, or you accidentally saved it on top of something else. That's not a problem because we can go to the morning or even to the midday-ish time. It varies the snapshots when it does it, and then restore the latest file. So the things that Datto will back up is your Exchange, so obviously your email backups, your tasks, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Microsoft Teams. And in terms of Google Workspace, it will do your Gmail, your Google Drive, your Google Calendar, Google Contacts, and obviously your shared drives. So the SaaS Protection will offer you a simple per licensing pricing, so you can deploy licenses across all users and redeploy them as you need them. It's completely flexible, so you only pay for what you want. So essentially the way it works is on a per mailbox. So let's say you have 20 mailboxes, but you only want to back up 5 of them. That can be done. Like I said earlier, you can restore up to 3 restore points per day. You have the option for unlimited data backup, but that can also be configured, as it says underneath, to have a custom retention period. So if you don't want to keep your data indefinitely, you can. You don't have to, sorry. So you can do it maybe just to retain your data for 3 months, for example. Now, in terms of pricing, the way we sell this is that we have essentially 2 sides of this. So we have the unlimited backups, which include the mailbox, the OneDrive, and your Teams. And that comes out to £2.55 a month. And then as well, we can also back up all your SharePoint sites, and that's £10 a month. So essentially, the mailbox, OneDrive, and Teams, that is a per mailbox cost. And for SharePoint, it doesn't matter how many sites you have, it will always be £10 a month. The only limitation there is essentially that you need to have at least 1 mailbox being backed up. So essentially it would be £12.55 minimum if you want to do your SharePoints and that 1 mailbox as well. Okay, so now we've reached the part for the questions and answers. So if you have any questions, I will give you a minute or 2 in order for you to type them up. And then if any questions come through, I will answer them as required. Okay, so it seems that nobody has a question, which is gratifying to know. Doesn't put me on the spot, so thank you very much. But before we go, I just wanted to let you know that our next webinar is going to be about our beautiful Mr. COVID-19 and how to prepare ourselves for the future of working after COVID, if that even exists, but at least, how companies will see this affecting them. Also, not just limited to sort of the offices, but also for the retail perspective and hospitality sector, etc., etc. So We haven't put a date yet. Most likely it will be either late April or maybe May. We haven't decided it, but as per usual, we will put the information on our LinkedIn site, and we will send a reminder just a few days before so you can join it. Okay, well, thank you very much for assisting this webinar. For those that started late or joined us late, sorry, we will send shortly an email with a link with this actual video and also a copy of this presentation so you can download it and share it with your colleagues. Also, if you want to watch it again, feel free. You will also be sent this email as well. So thank you very much for joining us. Take care and have a lovely day. Take care. Bye-bye.